I remember the day everything shifted, the moment I first felt the tremor of doubt ripple through the fabric of my marriage. It was a Saturday, a day that had always been reserved for us, an opportunity to reconnect after a busy week. We had plans to go hiking, something we both loved, but she didn't seem herself. When I woke up that morning, I noticed her phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. Normally, she would have silenced it, but that day, she just rolled over, her back to me, and let it ring. I tried to shake off the feeling, but the signs were there, like shadows lurking just beyond my line of sight. Her laughter had become a little too frequent when she was on the phone. There were whispers in the kitchen late at night, hushed conversations that abruptly stopped when I entered the room. I remembered her excuses about work commitments, late nights, and the unexpected need to catch up with friends. I wanted to believe her, to trust her, but the more I tried to convince myself, the more the seed of suspicion took root. One evening, I caught her staring at her phone, a smile creeping across her face that felt foreign to me. I had seen that smile before in the early days of our relationship when everything was fresh and new, but now it felt tainted, as if the joy she felt was meant for someone else. I asked her who she was texting, trying to sound casual, but she snapped back, "Just a friend, why do you care?" The defensiveness in her tone struck me like a slap, and I felt my heart sink. The following week was filled with little moments that seemed innocuous at first but began to weigh heavily on my mind. The smell of her perfume was different, a floral scent I didn't recognize. She started wearing clothes that hugged her figure in ways I hadn't seen before, and when I tried to initiate intimacy, she would deflect, often claiming exhaustion or that she had a headache. Each rejection felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. I found myself replaying our last few months together, searching for the moments that felt right, the times when we laughed and shared our dreams. They felt like distant memories, overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. I did want to believe she could betray me, but the thought was like a dark cloud looming over us, threatening to burst at any moment. Then came the day I saw the text message on her phone. I had just stepped out of the shower, and she had left it unattended on the kitchen counter. As I walked by, I caught a glimpse of a name I didn't recognize, followed by a string of heart emojis. My heart raced, and I fought against the urge to pick it up, to dive into a world of confirmation and pain. Instead, I turned away, my stomach churning. It was then that I made a choice. I wouldn't confront her yet. I needed to gather evidence to understand the full picture before I confronted the woman I loved. I started to observe her more closely, marking the moments she was gone and the little lies she told. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together fragments of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. As the days turned into weeks, my mind spiraled into a darkness I hadn't anticipated. Each day was a battle against the gnawing pain of suspicion and the longing for the love I once knew. I felt like a ghost in my own home, haunted by the memories of what we had built together and the looming threat of everything crumbling around me. I was caught in a web of my own making, and the threads were tightening. I could no longer ignore the signs. The woman I loved was slipping away, and I had to find out if my worst fears were true. After weeks of tormenting uncertainty, the moment came when I could no longer remain passive. I had gathered what felt like enough evidence to justify my suspicions, but the thought of confronting her lover filled me with dread. I didn't know who he was, but I was determined to track him down. The idea of facing the man who had invaded the sanctity of my marriage was both terrifying and intoxicating. It felt like stepping onto a battlefield where I could finally wage war against the betrayal that had ensnared my life. One evening, I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, fueled by a cocktail of anxiety and determination. I had spent hours searching social media and scouring mutual friends' posts, piecing together fragments of information. I finally found a name, Mark, associated with her recent outings. I felt a surge of anger. This Mark had taken my wife's laughter, her affection, and perhaps even her love. I had to confront him. I decided to meet him at a bar, a place I had learned he frequented. As I drove there, my mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions. Was I prepared for this? What if he denied everything? What if I was wrong? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. I was a man on the edge, caught between the need for answers and the fear of what those answers might bring. When I arrived, the bar was dimly lit, filled with the low hum of chatter and the clinking of glasses. I walked in, scanning the room until I spotted him, a tall man with dark hair, laughing with a group of friends. He seemed carefree, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. I approached their table, my heart pounding in my chest. The laughter around him faded as I drew closer, and the moment I locked eyes. With Mark, I could see the flicker of recognition. He knew who I was. "Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "We need to talk." His expression shifted from surprise to defensiveness in an instant. "About what?" he replied, trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the anxiety creeping in. "About my wife," I said, my words slicing through the air like a knife. "I know about you and her." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. He shifted in his seat, the bravado fading as he recognized the gravity of the situation. "Look, man, this isn't what you think," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice rising, fueled by a mix of anger and desperation. "I've seen the messages. I know you've been seeing her." At that moment, the laughter from his friends faded into the background, and the air became thick with tension. Mark hesitated, glancing around as if searching for an escape from the confrontation. "Okay, okay," he finally said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You want the truth. She's been seeing me for months." The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, and I struggled to process his words. Months? How could she do this to me? The betrayal twisted inside me, a dark vine wrapping around my heart. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his eyes darting as if he were trying to gauge my reaction. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did." The anger boiling inside me surged again. "You think that makes it okay? You think you can just shrug it off like it's nothing?" Mark leaned back, his bravado crumbling. "Look, I didn't force her. She chose this. I didn't know you." "Stop!" I interrupted, my voice rising again. "You think that matters? You're the one who took advantage of her." He opened his mouth to respond, but I could see the realization dawning on him. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "I didn't come here to fight you," he said finally, his voice quieter now. "I didn't want any of this to happen. I thought she was unhappy." "Unhappy?" My voice was incredulous. "Unhappy enough to cheat? You think that's the solution?" He shrugged, looking defeated. "I don't know, man. I wanted to be there for her. She seemed lost." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt my heart shatter further. She had confided in him, shared her doubts and fears, and he had taken that vulnerability and twisted it into betrayal. I could feel the anger draining from me, leaving behind a hollow ache. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was exhausted, caught in a storm of emotions I had never wanted to face. Mark looked at me, his expression shifting from defiance to something resembling empathy. "I don't know. You need to talk to her. You deserve the truth." I nodded, feeling the finality of his words settle in. I had come seeking answers, and now I had them, but they felt like shards of glass piercing my heart. The confrontation had stripped away any illusions I had clung to, and I was left standing at the precipice of a painful truth. As I left the bar, the weight of the night pressed down on me. I had confronted the man who had stolen my wife's affection, but what I really needed to do was confront her. The truth was now clear, but it was a truth that would tear apart everything I had believed in. After leaving the bar, I drove home in a daze, the streetlights blurring past me like the memories of my marriage. The conversation with Mark echoed in my mind, each word a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I felt like a ghost, floating through my own life, detached from reality. The warmth of home, once a sanctuary, now felt cold and unwelcoming, a reminder of everything I had lost. As I entered the house, the silence enveloped me. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, but it all felt distant. I walked into the living room, my heart heavy with the weight of the truth I now carried. I needed to confront her, to lay bare the reality of our situation, but part of me hesitated. The woman I loved was still here, But the love I felt for her was now tangled with anger and betrayal. I found her in the kitchen, her back turned to me as she prepared dinner. The smell of sautéed vegetables filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. I stood there for a moment, watching her, trying to reconcile the woman I had married with the stranger who had betrayed me. I wanted to scream, to unleash all the hurt and confusion that had been building inside me, but I knew I needed to approach this carefully. "Can we talk?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Of course, what's wrong?" The casual tone of her voice felt like a slap. How could she act as if nothing had changed? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I know about Mark." Her expression shifted instantly, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I spoke to him tonight," I replied, my heart racing. "He confirmed everything. You've been seeing him." Behind my back. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I could see her mind racing, searching for an escape, a way to deny the truth. "It's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I shot back, the anger bubbling to the surface. "Explain how you chose to betray me, how you let another man into our lives while I was here, believing everything was fine." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But the pain of betrayal was too raw, too immediate. "Please, just let me talk," she pleaded, her voice breaking. I nodded, my arms crossed over my chest, bracing myself for her words. I was prepared for excuses, for justifications that wouldn't erase the hurt she had caused. "I felt so alone," she began, her voice trembling. "Things between us, they had changed. I thought we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. Mark was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. It just happened. So you decided to sleep with him," I interrupted, incredulous. "That's your solution, to betray your husband?" "I never meant for it to go that far," she insisted, her voice rising again. "I thought it was just talking. I didn't realize I was falling for him until it was too late." The words cut through me like a knife. "You fell for him," I echoed, the pain intensifying. "What about us? What about our vows?" "I know," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry. I was confused and scared. I thought you didn't love me anymore." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "So this is my fault," I said, my voice rising again. "You chose to betray me because you thought I didn't love you. I don't know, I felt so lost." Her voice cracked and she broke down in tears. "I thought I could find my way back, but instead I just hurt you." I took a step back, the weight of her words crashing down on me. I had poured my heart into our marriage, but now I was faced with the reality that she had sought solace in another man. "You didn't think to talk to me first?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "You didn't think to communicate how you felt?" "I was afraid," she admitted, wiping her tears. "I thought you would dismiss me, that you wouldn't understand. I didn't want to burden you with my insecurities." "Burden me?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think cheating on me is better than talking to me?" She looked down, shame washing over her face. I know it sounds terrible, but in that moment it felt like the only option. I was wrong, and I see that now. But please, I love you. I want to fix this. The desperation in her voice tugged at something deep within me, but the betrayal felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. "How can I trust you?" I asked, my voice breaking. "How can I believe anything you say after this?" "I'll do anything," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I'll go to counseling. I'll cut off all ties with Mark. Just please don't leave me." Her words hung in the air, and I felt torn between the love I still had for her and the pain of her betrayal. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that we could rebuild, but the shadows of doubt loomed large. "I don't know if I can," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." As I stepped back, the distance between us felt insurmountable. I had wanted answers, but now I was left grappling with a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew. The woman I loved had betrayed me, and the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. I turned away, feeling the walls of our home close in on me. I needed space to think, to process everything that had just unfolded. As I walked out into the night, the cool air hit my face, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling inside. I had confronted the truth, but now I had to confront my heart. The night air felt heavy as I walked aimlessly down the street, my mind racing with a cacophony of emotions. I had just confronted my wife about her infidelity, and now I was left with a sense of emptiness that felt as vast as the night sky overhead. I needed to process everything, the confrontation, the revelation, the raw pain that coursed through me. Each step felt like a reminder of the life I once had, now irrevocably altered. I found myself at the park where we used to walk together, hand in hand, laughing and sharing our dreams. It felt surreal to be there alone, the memories flooding back with a bittersweet sting. I sat on a bench, looking out at the empty playground, the swings swaying gently in the breeze. I remembered the first time I had taken her here, how her laughter had filled the air, how her smile had lit up my world. But now that joy felt like a distant echo, replaced by a gnawing ache of betrayal. What had happened to us? How had we drifted so far apart that she felt the need to seek comfort in another man? I ran my hands through my hair, frustration boiling beneath the surface. I had poured my heart into our marriage, believing we were a team, partners in every sense of the word. Yet here I was, grappling with the reality that she had chosen to confide in someone else, to find solace in the arms of another. After what felt like hours, I finally made my way home. The house was quiet, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. I could hear the faint sound of her crying from the other room, and my heart twisted in my chest. I had seen the pain in her eyes, the guilt that weighed heavily on her shoulders, but it didn't change the fact that she had shattered my trust. I closed the door softly, not wanting to disturb her further, and made my way to the living room. I sank onto the couch, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. It was hard to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who had betrayed me. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to let the anger pour out of me, but instead I sat there in silence, wrestling with my thoughts. Eventually, I heard her footsteps approaching. She appeared in the doorway, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid and selfish." I looked at her, searching for the love that had once filled my heart, but all I felt was a deep sense of betrayal. "How could you do this?" I asked, my voice low and strained. "How could you let it go this far?" "I don't know," she replied, her voice breaking. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was just talking to him, that it wouldn't go anywhere. I didn't realize how deep it had gotten until it was too late." The excuse felt hollow, a feeble attempt to justify her actions. "You thought you could talk to him about us, but you couldn't talk to me," I asked, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You chose to share your heart with him instead of your husband." "I was afraid," she said, stepping closer. "I thought you wouldn't understand. I thought I was losing you and I didn't know how to reach out." "Afraid?" I echoed, disbelief flooding my voice. "Afraid enough to cheat on me? That doesn't make sense. You could have come to me, but instead, you chose to betray everything we built together." "I know I messed up," she said, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was finding a way to feel better, to find myself again." I shook my head, the pain clawing at my insides. "You weren't lost. We were going through a rough patch, but we could have worked through it together. Instead, you ran away." Her shoulders slumped and she looked down, shame washing over her. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll cut him off, I'll go to therapy, whatever you want. Just please don't leave me." The desperation in her voice echoed in my mind, but I felt a part of me harden. "How can I trust you again?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How can I believe that you won't do it again?" "I'll prove it to you," she insisted, stepping closer. "I love you. I made a terrible mistake, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. I want to fix this." The words hung in the air, and I felt torn between the love I still had for her and the pain of her betrayal. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that we could rebuild, but the shadows of doubt loomed large. "I don't know if I can do this," I said finally, my voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forget what you've done." She reached for my hand, her touch igniting a flicker of warmth in the coldness that had settled in my heart. "Please, just give me a chance. We can work through this together. I'll fight for us." I looked into her eyes, searching for the love that had once filled my heart, but all I saw was the pain of betrayal reflected back at me. I wanted to believe that we could heal, that we could find our way back to each other, but the path ahead felt daunting. "I need time," I finally said, pulling my hand away. I need to think about everything. I don't want to make any decisions in the heat of the moment. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I understand. Just know that I'm here and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. As she turned to leave, I felt the weight of uncertainty settle over me. The road ahead was unclear, and I was left grappling with my emotions, trying to navigate the fragile landscape of trust and betrayal. I had confronted the truth, but now I had to confront my own heart and decide what the future would hold. In the days that followed, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and a flicker of hope. The confrontation with my wife had left me reeling, and I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing between the love I had for her and the pain of her betrayal. Each moment was a struggle, a tug-of-war between my heart and my mind. I spent hours reflecting on our relationship, trying to piece together the fragments of what had gone wrong. I thought back to the early days when we first fell in love, the laughter, the late-night conversations, the dreams we shared. It was hard to reconcile that joy with the reality of our current situation. The memories felt like a double-edged sword, reminding me of what we had and what I stood to lose. I began to notice the little things that had changed in our dynamic. The way she would glance at her phone, the hesitance in her laughter, the moments of silence that stretched between us. I wanted to reach out and bridge the gap, but I was afraid of opening old wounds, afraid of what the truth might reveal. One evening I found myself sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. My wife had gone to bed early, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our old photos, trying to find a sense of comfort in the memories. There we were, smiling at the beach, laughing at a restaurant, celebrating milestones together. The happiness radiating from those images felt like a stark contrast to the pain I was feeling now. I paused on a photo from our wedding day, her in a beautiful white dress, her smile bright and full of love. I remembered how I had felt that day, the promise of forever hanging in the air. The vows we exchanged echoed in my mind, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. But now, those vows felt like a cruel reminder of the fragility of trust. As I sat there lost in thought, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could choose to hold on to the pain and let it consume me, or I could try to find a way to heal and rebuild. The idea of forgiveness felt daunting, but the thought of losing her forever was even more terrifying. I decided it was time to confront my feelings head-on. I needed to talk to her, to express the turmoil that had taken root in my heart. I wanted to understand how we had arrived at this point and what steps we could take to move forward. I needed to know if she was truly committed to making things right. The next evening I found her in the kitchen again, preparing dinner. This time I approached her with a sense of purpose. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady. She turned to me, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. "Of course, what's on your mind?" "I've been thinking a lot about everything," I began, my heart racing. "About us, about what happened. I want to understand how we got here. I've been thinking about it." "Too," she replied, her voice soft. "I know I hurt you and I can't express how sorry I am. I want to fix this, but I know it's going to take time." "Time is what we need," I said, nodding. "But we also need to talk about what led to this. I want to understand why you felt you couldn't come to me." She sighed, looking down at her hands. "I thought I could handle my feelings on my own. I was scared of being vulnerable, of admitting that I was struggling. I thought I was losing you, and instead of reaching out, I pushed you away." "By cheating," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You pushed me away by seeking comfort in another man." "I know," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I was wrong. I thought I could find a connection with him that I felt was missing between us. But I realize now that I was just running away from my problems instead of facing them with you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the emotions swirling within me. "I want to believe that we can rebuild, but it's going to take a lot of work. I need to know that you're committed to this, to us." "I am," she replied, her voice filled with sincerity. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy, I'll cut off all ties with Mark, and I'll be open and honest with you about everything. I want to earn back your trust." The sincerity in her voice struck a chord within me, but doubt still lingered. "Trust is fragile," I said, my voice trembling. "It's hard to rebuild once it's broken." I need to know that you're willing to fight for us. I'll fight for us every single day, she insisted. I don't want to lose you. I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. As I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the possibility of healing. But the road ahead felt daunting, fraught with challenges and uncertainty. I need time to process everything, I said finally, my voice steady. I want to work on this together, but I can't promise it will be easy. I understand, she replied, her eyes filled with determination. I'm here for the long haul. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to us. As we sat there, the weight of our past hung heavy in the air, but for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope. The journey ahead would be difficult, but perhaps it was possible to find a way back to each other. I realized then that love is not just about the good times, it's also about navigating the storms together. It would take time, effort, and a willingness to confront the pain, but I was willing to try. The weeks turned into months, and the process of rebuilding our marriage was a journey filled with ups and downs. We began attending couples therapy, where we learned to communicate openly about our feelings and fears. Each session was a mix of tears and breakthroughs, as we dug deep into the roots of our issues. I realized that the cracks in our relationship had formed long before the affair, stemming from unspoken insecurities and misunderstandings that had festered over time. My wife was committed to change, and I could see her efforts. She cut off all communication with Mark, and although it hurt to revisit those memories, I found solace in her determination to earn back my trust. She would often share her thoughts with me, sometimes even writing letters expressing her feelings. It was a small but significant step toward transparency, and I appreciated the vulnerability it required of her. However, the scars of betrayal were not easily erased. There were days when I would catch myself staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who had caused me so much pain. The memories of her betrayal would creep in uninvited, and I would feel the familiar pang of hurt. I had to remind myself that healing was not linear. It was a process that required patience and understanding. I also began to open up about my own feelings. I shared the moments of doubt and insecurity I had faced during our relationship, the times I had felt neglected or alone. It was liberating to express my truth, and I could see the impact it had on her. She listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy, and I realized that these conversations were helping us both heal. As time went on, I found a renewed sense of hope. The laughter that had once filled our home began to return, albeit cautiously. We started going on date nights again, rediscovering the joy of being together. We revisited our favorite spots, shared new experiences, and slowly the warmth of our connection began to rekindle. Yet the journey was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, and sometimes I would find myself questioning whether I could truly forgive her. I struggled with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if I was enough or if she would ever truly be satisfied with me. But each time those thoughts arose, I reminded myself of the commitment we had made to each other, to face the pain together and work through it. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to her and said, "You know, I still love you. I'm learning to trust you again, but it's a process." She smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I love you too. I'm so grateful for your willingness to work through this. I know I've hurt you, and I'll spend my life trying to make it right." In that moment, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The path to healing was not easy, but we were navigating it together, and that made all the difference. I had learned that love is not just about the highs, it's also about how we weather the storms. It's about forgiveness, understanding, and the willingness to fight for one another, even when it feels impossible. As I reflected on the journey we had taken, I realized that betrayal had opened my eyes to the complexities of love. It had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities and insecurities, and it had taught me the importance of communication and honesty in a relationship. I understood now that trust is not a given. It's something that must be nurtured and protected. In the end, I chose to believe in the possibility of love's resilience. I chose to believe that we could rebuild what had been broken. With each passing day, we were learning to love each other in new ways. forging a bond that was stronger for having faced adversity together. As I sat there with my wife, her hand in mine, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would still hold challenges, but I was ready to face them, knowing that we were committed to each other. The complexities of love and betrayal had taught me invaluable lessons, and I was determined to carry them forward into our future. Life is unpredictable and love can be messy, but in the end, it's the moments of connection, understanding, and growth that define our journey together. I took a deep breath, feeling hopeful for what lay ahead, ready to embrace both the joys and challenges of our shared life. I had confronted the truth, navigated the pain, and emerged on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose. Love, I realized, is not just about the absence of betrayal. It's about the willingness to rise above it and choose each other time and time again. And with that realization, I knew we were on our way to healing together.